Okay, we are live again. And yes, I'm now on my second one. This is yellow. The first one was red. So I like to be color coordinated. Um, Anyways, this hangout is going to be about a post that Jade made in regards to an engineer that decided to dip his hand in biology. It's pretty comical. I haven't read all of it. I read about half of it and went, oh, this is too classic. And I knew it was something I wanted to do a video on, but it wasn't something that was like low hanging fruit or fruit on the ground, because this guy was obviously not fruit on the ground. He was an engineer. So, anyways, we're gonna be doing a little back and forth with this video, mostly Jade, because this is her baby, and we were bored, and I still got alcohol, so what the hell. Anyways, what we're going to be talking about is this particular thing here. I'm going to screen share real quick. Boom, boom, boom. It's called 7 Biology Myths No Electrical Engineer Would Ever Tolerate. And I'm just going to read a little bit about it. It's like, as an electrical engineer, I am appalled at the intellectual slop that passes for science and biology. Engineers would lose their jobs in droves if they tolerated the mushy thinking and lack of rigor that is routine in the life sciences. Before I elaborate on this, some background. 15 years ago, I could not imagine or would become interested in DNA, biology, evolution, or any such thing. Biology in high school was boring. He spells it out. Chemistry in college was hard slog. I got my degree in electrical engineering, specializing in communications and controlled systems. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we don't give a shit about your background. So he actually came up with these things that I don't know, Jade. I don't know if he pulled these out of his ass. I don't know if he got these out of a book. I have no idea. Okay, so we're going to go by each one by one, and then you kind of talk about them, because some of these were really comical, but some of them do require a little technical expertise that I'm not that familiar with, because I do not know systems signal information. I got a book on discrete signal processing that I probably read about 25 years ago, okay, when I was working with TTL circuits, so it's not my thing. But anyways, I'm going to stop my screen share. Well, no, I'll leave my screen share. No, they can follow along if they want. But anyways, why don't you give more about the information where you found this and why you want to go over it, okay?
Well, somebody, hang on a minute. Come on, get to where I want to go. There we go. The original site has one of those little pop-ups that was annoying that I had to get rid of. Somebody posted this on one of the Facebook groups I belong to, and I belong to several Facebook groups that discuss creationism, intelligent design, and things like this. So somebody posted this as a look, evolution can't be true, and I looked at it, and I would never knock electrical engineers. My dad was an electrical engineer, and he was a brilliant guy. But just because you're good in one field doesn't mean you know anything about another field, and at least my dad would have admitted that he didn't know anything about it. This guy, on the other hand, seems to think that he can translate what he knows from electrical engineering, the way electrical engineering works, into biology. And I'd like to point out that somebody else in a different field did this once. The guy was named Philip Johnson, and he was a law professor at Berkeley, and he thought that he could apply the rules of law to the theory of evolution, and that didn't work so well. And he's the guy who started modern creationism with the Wedge document and everything like that. So,
ooh,
yeah. Anyway, I guess number one, random mutations are usually neutral or harmful, but occasionally they confer a benefit to an organism. Natural selection filters out the harmful mutations, causing species to evolve. Now, he has quotes around that. I don't know where his quotes come from. Random mutations are usually neutral. And most mutations do not occur in germ cells. Most mutations occur elsewhere, which is why when I was younger, one day I looked down at my arm and I had a little dark spot that I never had before. It was just a little mole, kind of, that I'd never had before. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, and then it later disappeared. What it was is some skin cells just mutated and changed color, and then my body fixed it. We have lots of mutations. Our cells are constantly dividing, and we couldn't live if they weren't. And in that constant division, we get mutations now and then. So there are, just in every individual, there are lots of mutations. We are born with something like 200 different mutations, but it depends on where the mutations are. And also some mutations, the whole concept of randomness is very annoying, which I'm not going to go into. But things aren't completely random. They are random within parameters. It's the very basic parameters they're random within, of course, are the laws of physics and chemistry. But they're also random in the I can't think of the word I'm looking for. It's like
Stochastic?
Yeah, I guess that'll work. Yeah, yeah. There are limits. They said they're random within certain parameters. Oh, I have to figure out what I was trying to say later. Dewey says this is central dogma of neo-Darwinism, and is allegedly accepted by virtually all scientists. That kind of doesn't make sense, dude. If you're writing, you don't use allegedly and then virtually all. It just doesn't. Okay, bad English, bad form. You will find it in literally 1,000 textbooks. Again, learn English. You really don't need to use literally. This is just... Clearly he's an engineer and didn't study English. To the average biologist, the average man on the street, it sounds perfectly plausible, and I fully... Okay. I'm an EE. But I'm an EE. He's better than the average biologist. I know that this is the good part, folks. I know that the information in DNA is a signal. By definition, random mutations are noise.
What?
No, they're not. Sorry, dude. Wrong.
He's literally trying to inject signal processing. I mean, you know how you have your sine wave, and you know how you have a threshold of like a noise level. You have your discrete, and you have an analog. He's literally taking a concept from his field, grossly misapplying it. I mean, natural selection filters out the harmful mutations. No, not necessarily. I mean, where does that even come into play? We all have some kind of harmful mutations. People have sickle cell anemia. That's a harmful. It's a beneficial mutation, but not always. It could be a harmful mutation depending on if they're not in a situation where they're not exposed to malaria. It all depends on selective pressures. But natural selection doesn't mean that you're going to be filtered out because they have a sickle cell trait.
Steve.
Yes, Jamal. Hey, what's up, my friend? We're having Boone's Farm and discussing sciencey stuff. What could go wrong?
Have you heard of this? I guess he's an electric engineer as well. His name is Perry Marshall, and he comes up with a similar argument that DNA is analogous to what you would find in like in electric engineering. Well, let me share a screen of his website.
Okay. The problem I have with that is, okay, first of all, when you're talking about information, that's what it really boils down to. Is it teleological information? Is it a code? The answer simply is no.
Yeah, it is a code.
Well, it's not, because to have a code, you're talking about symbology. Symbols represent something that has some kind of intrinsic informational content. Jade was talking about in the last video called Shannon information.
Okay, so let me read what's on the screen. Okay, so code is defined as the rules of communication between an encoder, a writer or a speaker, and a decoder, a reader or listener, using agreed upon symbols.
Symbols.
Yes. DNA. Hold on. DNA. What the heck is this pop-up keep coming up on my screen?
I know, dude. I have the same freaking thing on that site.
I know. I've had the same problem too. It's just, yeah.
Well, how do you get rid of this? Oh, there it goes. Okay.
Yeah. You just have to wait some of them out.
DNA's definition has a literal code and not a figurative one, is nearly universal in the entire body of biological literature since the 1960s. DNA code has much in common with human language and computer languages. DNA transcription is an encoding, decoding mechanism isomorphic with Claude Shannon's 1948 model. The sequence of base pairs is encoded into messenger RNA, which is decoded into proteins. Information theory terms and ideas applied to DNA are not metaphorical, but in fact quite literal in every way. In other words, the information theory argument for design is not based on analogy at all. It is direct application of mathematics to DNA.
Hold on. I want to address this because Jamal. Before I begin, do you know what?
I'm going to moderate this because I all want to get into this. And obviously, Jade, I know we want to talk about the exact thing that you have in your post, but obviously we're going to dwell a little bit.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Because this is directly related. It's a great question.
Yep.
We all can answer this. I want Jade to answer it first, and then I want Max. Is that okay?
Well, actually, let go to. Well, first of all, I disagree with the first line of this thing.
We're going to break this down. We're going to break this down. I disagree with all of it, but I say what you got to say, then we're going to move on to the next.
Okay, hang on. Let me look at
my point analysis
again. I've got to. I can't see it. Okay. Okay, you got to move it up so I can see it. It says code is defined as the rules of communication between an encoder, a writer or speaker, and a decoder, a reader or listener, using agreed upon symbols. Please explain how these symbols were agreed upon in the cell.
I don't. Well, he references the supposed leading bioinform. I don't know how to pronounce it. Informatics, right. His name is Hubert Yaki, and he defines code quite literally.
He defines. I like that.
Yeah, and this is from his book, Hubert Yaki, Information Theory, Evolution, and Origin of Life. And Hubert Yaki, he actually admits that the source of the coded information in DNA is unknowable. He doesn't say he's not a believer in God, but he admits that it cannot come about by natural processes because there's nothing in nature that can produce coded information.
Well, we're gonna address it because there's so many things wrong with this. I'm literally just.
Oh man, I am so ready to jump on this one myself.
Okay,
let Isaiah say what he's got to say first, because Isaiah doesn't get to talk much because he's a worse mic than me most of the time. And then Max can. So Isaiah, say what you got to say.
Okay. Jamal. Yeah, this is Jamal, right? Jamal, do you know what the basic unit of information would be? What the hell is that echo?
You, because you got a shitty mic. I keep telling you. People talk about my mic. Yours is worse than me.
Okay, I didn't hear it.
When he asked you what the basic unit.
Yeah, you're talking about A, C, T, and G. I forgot that name.
No, those are the monomers for DNA. I asked for the basic unit of information according to Shannon theory.
According to Shannon theory, no, I don't.
Well, it's a bit.
Yeah, 0 and 1.
Okay.
Binary, base 2. 2 and. It's binary.
Yeah, and then in DNA, it's quaternary, right? Or is
No, it's not.
Oh, that's right, because you don't believe DNA has a code. That's right.
No, I can demonstrate very easily why it doesn't, but I'm going to do that last. I want everybody else to go first.
Okay, so go ahead. Do you have a point, Isaiah?
Yeah, my problem with calling DNA information, how would we quantify a molecule into bits?
Well, he does. There's different ways. I think there's different ways you can do that. I have to read over this page again. It's been a while since I was into this, but you can't quantify the amount of information in DNA. Even evolutionists do that. So I don't know what's your issue there.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were ready to let me jump in. Just go ahead, Isaiah.
Oh no, I'm done now.
Go ahead, Max. I'm gonna let you rip in this one a little bit, and then I know we got Fiona here. I want to address it myself. It's my hangout, but.
All right, I'm willing to just grant, for the sake of argument, what you said, that it is literally information in a literal sense, not even in an analogous sense. I don't know whether it is or not. I'm kind of a noob when it comes to biology, but I do like philosophy. So. And I usually like to analyze people's arguments. I think your point I think this kind of teleological argument tends to be either redundant or fallacious, and here's why. We actually have things which design based off information which aren't sentient or living things. How about computers designing other computers? Like, that actually happens. Now, you might say, well, that process terminates in intelligence because we design computers. But why does that? But at that point, we're either cherry picking and only allowing for direct results because we'd have to include computers and whatnot, Or what has to happen is we have to include not only the term, we'd have to include indirect causes, which means, humans going back. But how about what causes the humans? If that's an open question, as per what an argument needs to be, then wouldn't we have to go back to the universe itself? And aren't atheists already committed to the notion that the universe is just one big machine? And if that's the case, then you're probably going to need something like a cosmological argument to show that the universe itself came from an intelligence. But if that's the case, why need a teleological argument? It would make your argument redundant.
Well, DNAs, to me, in my opinion, DNA is blatantly intelligently designed because it has very high, highly specified, complex information.
Yeah, so do computers. What's your point? And computers can design those.
And computers are designed, right?
Right, but they could also be designed by other computers.
But who designed,
so
but who designed the computer to design the computers?
Oh, well, humans. But this is the point here, but this is the important part that you're missing out on. If your question is about who designed human beings, then that question is either going to terminate in God, or it's going to terminate in the universe itself, which is just really a big conditioning machine. So if if both the conditioning machine and human beings are able to design, then really what's going to settle the matter is a cosmological argument. But if you're going to offer me a cosmological argument for the universe, then your teleological argument was, well, redundant.
Well, no, I will go with God because we know we can't...
Wait. At this point, if you're going with God and offering an argument for God, how's that not a cosmological argument over the universe?
I don't get your point there. Can you please explain?
Your point is your argument is redundant because you're appealing now for a cosmological reason, on the universal scale, and was showing that your initial argument was redundant.
No, my argument is that my argument is pretty basic. Highly specified information or coded information comes from an intelligent source. And
or from computers, which, again, which means that both are possible, and in which case we're either going to terminate with a universal machine, like a universe, or a God, in which case, in that case, we're up to a cosmological argument. So there we are.
What do you mean by a universal machine? I'm not familiar with that.
So I'm saying here is that the universe, in this case, acts like a huge machine, does it not? I mean, like if it just works as a series of processes. That's it, and it's either going to, and that means human beings are going to emerge from those processes. So it's either going to end at the universe or it's going to end at God. If it ends at the universe, it's more analogous to the machine than it is to the universe, than it is to God or an intelligence. Is it not?
But we have never seen, it's never been documented that nature or any kind of natural processes.
Neither has a God.
Outside of any intelligent source has created coded information.
Well, first of all,
neither has a God. Neither has a God, though. If it's unsettled at this matter, then neither has a God. Both are options.
Let's take it back a notch. First of all, we haven't even established this coded information the way you're describing coded information. We haven't even got that far yet.
Yeah, it's coded information.
So let's
and even granting it, your argument's redundant or fallacious.
Everybody here on this panel will agree design happens. We all agree DNA could be considered design. I have no issue with that. So let's think of the thing we are agreeing upon.
It's brilliantly designed and efficiently designed.
It's not efficient.
It's not. Yeah,
I was actually just sharing an article with the Rumpus about. Well, I've let everyone else talk, and I spent 5 years writing doing undergraduate research, publishing, and writing a master's thesis on the topic. So perhaps I'm qualified to comment on this. DNA is not efficient. Hey, I'm in the middle of a sentence, Jamal. Do you want to be quiet for 2 seconds? All right.
Go ahead.
So I mean, I think that it's actually kind of foolish to say that DNA is efficient. It really is incredibly inefficient. And I can illustrate many ways why, but it happens to be the case that if you consider it as as a part of what you would expect from a messy process like that has been weeded out by natural selection, then it makes a lot more sense.
Right.
Jamal, before we go further, Jamal, can you post the link of what you have in the side chat so I can present it to people so they know what we're talking about? And then I want Sam and Fiona to kind of go last because this is their expertise area, things they do know quite a bit about. The doc wanted to ask you a question, but I want to be able to present the paper as we go because it's directly related to Jade's post in regards to the engineer, because this is where he's getting this information from. So this is directly related. But I want to go more point by point, but give me the link. That's the link. And then go ahead, Doc. Can you ask your question real quick, then we'll kind of turn over to Sam and Fiona a little bit.
Sure. I think we're actually just talking past one another because he keeps saying that DNA is a code and DNA contains information. Now, Jamal, do you know in intelligent design what the definition of information is?
He uses the Claude Shannon's definition of information.
Do you know what Claude Shannon's definition of information is, Jamal?
I could read it off his webpage.
Well, I'll tell you off the top of my head because this is because if you don't know, I'm getting my PhD in bioinformatics, which is the application of informatics, statistical, and computational techniques towards biological data sets. And what Claude Shannon's vision of information, and granted, this is not the only vision of information, it's the most common, is that it's a reduction of uncertainty. So, I mean, what Claude Shannon wrote in his original paper is that any process that can reduce uncertainty due to having a statistical effect has information. So, technically, something that is relatively uninformed, which is, could you mute when you're not talking, Jamal? I'm hearing myself in my own voice.
Yeah, stop
in my own ears.
Yeah.
Well, technically, any process that operates probabilistically and has an outcome will give you information. So if I flip an evenly weighted coin, that gives me information. But if I flip a coin that is weighted towards one side rather than another, that gives me more information. And that's what Shannon was about, because he wanted to be able to basically say how much can a signal inform you, given the statistical noise associated with communication. And this is why, by the way, I'm quoting almost directly from what granted it's off memory, but this is exactly what we mean by information in the field, at least as mathematical formula.
Are you familiar with Hubert Yaki?
What I was talking about specifically was how do intelligent design proponents use the term information, and the term that they use. The definition they use is an encoded, symbolically represented message conveying an expected action and intended purpose. So the problem, Jamal, is if someone's using something like Shannon's information, intelligent design proponents have a bad habit of taking that, equivocating the terms, and using one that already assumes the conclusion.
Well, can I jump in here? Hubert Yaki, who is quoted on the webpage, he's not even a creationist or an intelligent design proponent. But he says, out of his book, which was published in 2005, let me read off the website. The book, Information Theory, Evolution, and the Origin of Life, which is written by Hubert Yaki, the foremost living specialist in bioinformatics.
No, he's not. By the way, no, he's not.
Okay, I'm pretty sure that's just his opinion. The publisher is Cambridge University Press. Yaki rigorously demonstrates that the coding process in DNA is identical to the coding process and mathematical definitions used in electrical engineering. This is not subjective, it is not debatable, or even controversial. It is brute fact. And here's a quote right here. Information, transcription, translation, code, redundancy, synonymous, messenger, editing, and proofreading are all appropriate terms in biology. They take their meaning from information theory, Shannon 1948, and are not synonyms, metaphors, or analogies. And that's from his book.
Why should we take his book on board, though? I mean, you're just saying words. I mean, the reason that the reason that people use that linguistic framework is because it's useful in describing the process. I mean, these are descriptions at a very high level. If you look at the history, I mean, if you want to actually know why people use these words, you can read about the history of molecular biology. I mean, this is a bit like saying that the gene Sonic Hedgehog is actually reflected of the character Sonic Hedgehog because a bunch of nerdy developmental biologists named it that.
Wait, is the book you're citing, Jamal, from 1948? Is that what I heard correctly?
No, that's Claude Shannon's. I mean,
Yeah,
that's Claude Shannon's work, which, by the way, I mean, that doesn't really, like I just explained, does not really impact us. I mean, you can wave your dick all about how Hubert Yaki is a bioinformatician. The fact is he's not influential in the field. I know that. That's what I do for a living.
I'm only muting you because of the feedback that you're having, because I'm hearing it as well. Just muting it. Let's actually look. I'm going to screen share real quick. I want to go into what he's actually showing, as what we're referring to as this, what you have here for, is DNA a code. Now, you're taking the position that it's actually literally, informational system and code. Now, the first one, the code is defined as rules of communication between an encoder, writer, and speaker as a decoder, a reader and listener using agreed upon symbols. I don't think anybody really challenges that one, do they? It's one definition of it.
Where is this located in the page?
The very top.
Okay. But I mean, what? How do you? Wouldn't you need to, for this definition, demonstrate that there is an encoder?
Yeah, well, this is the argument. This is the thing that Jade brought up. This is a definition, but it's not the only definition.
Well, mathematically, when I think of a code, when I think about it mathematically, what a code is basically something that you could put a coding function to describe the relationship between two sets of symbols. And I mean, I'm perfectly willing to accept that DNA is a code under that definition.
Okay.
I think it's fairly cut and dried.
So Jamal, what are the symbols involved for the DNA, though? That's a question I really never have answered, and you can't just go A, C, T, and G, because that doesn't really tell me anything. Those are just the first letters of the names of the nitrogenous bases. So what exactly is the symbols we're using here to develop the code to give us information? Based on your own thing here for code, what are the symbols?
Well,
Okay.
so you,
Anybody?
Steve.
Go ahead.
So who here is disputing it's not information? Because I'm afraid, for fear of falling out with Sam.
I think we all would say they're information, but we're always more the definition of information being
it's information.
Yeah.
It's when you add on these arbitrary.
Right.
I mean, I made a video about this where I said I'm perfectly willing to accept really any I mean, when I say that, and I work in the field, and I say that there is information in DNA, it's simply to say that the things that are genetically stored to express a phenotype are in the DNA. And I have no problem with that. That's a pretty fair operational definition. I mean, how that implies it comes from a mind is beyond me. But
Oh right, so we are accepting, is it? Because this is where I fell out with. This is where I first fell out with Sam. When I had a misunderstanding, because I've always felt that it is information, and the fact that natural selection basically cuts out, as Sam was saying, it's all about removing uncertainty, and natural selection is effectively slicing out the bollocks, leaving you with useful information there. And obviously, as we've seen, DNA, it gets copied faithfully, it's stored faithfully, it's translated into other things to generate proteins, it's transmitted, and it's copied, received. It does all that. It's got as much information there to build a body, which is more complicated than building a jumbo 747. So it seems to me qualified as information just about as much as you can. But obviously the design is not there.
Well, I would say that I don't think that it's information in the sense that I don't think that anything, quote unquote, is information. What I would say is it contains information. But I mean, we're splitting here. They mean the same thing. Yeah,
no, you're absolutely right. No, you're absolutely right to put it that way, Sam. Yeah, it contains information. Yes, and of course the storage system itself is very very secure. But obviously, if you could use DNA to store, a CD on there. So obviously the quality of the information there is important, and the information there is obviously building a body, whatever. And then of course it's got all these mechanisms that treat it like information, just like it does in your computer.
Right, and I want to look at this communication model, because this is kind of the heart of the crux of Jamal's argument, and obviously the engineer that had delved into biology. this is kind of where he's coming from, calling mutations and mistakes in the genetic code as noise in the system. And obviously, I want Sam to really kind of delve into this because this is.
Well, I'm wondering because implicit in this definition is an encoder and a decoder, and I don't really know. Like, for one thing, that's not implicit in any definition of information theory or coding theory that is like used on a strict mathematical basis. That's one thing. I mean, this is just kind of. I mean, if we're going to go off of what literature definitions are, this is way off the map. But the second thing is like, I mean, what is the encoder in the? I mean, you need to demonstrate that there's an encoder, and if you're using God as DNA as an argument for God, that seems incredibly circular. And then a decoder, I mean, I have no idea what that would mean.
Well, first of all, it's funny
in the context of biology.
Just Sam, if you look at this thing here, they're calling encoding DNA to RNA. That's what they're calling encoding.
That's what I was about to say. You could regard the decoding of DNA as the conversion to messenger RNA being sent off to be turned into proteins.
So
that seems very odd to me biologically, because when I think, I mean, DNA is not. I mean, yeah, I would. Like, I'm loosely able to say that, okay, there's a decoding of what is stored in DNA. I mean, there's two steps. I mean, it can stop at the first step, which is transcription, if it's a non-coding RNA, or, I mean, it extends into being translated, in which case it's a protein. Like, I don't think that that's particularly controversial. I mean, but this need for an agent, I'm wondering from Jamal, like, how do you demonstrate? I mean, first off, who is the decoder and who is the encoder?
There you go. Good question, Jamal.
Could I break in here to say something?
Sure.
You know the 7 biology myths, no electrical engineer? This is the same guy. It's the same site.
Oh, no wonder it's so intricately related. Really?
Okay.
Oh,
I just.
You're right. Cosmic fingerprints. I should have caught that. My bad.
Yeah, I did. I realized that a little bit ago, and then I just thought I wanted to mention that. But anyway, go ahead. I just wanted to mention that.
Makes a lot of sense now.
And also, I gotta go in like 20 minutes. So I mean, if you guys don't mind me driving the conversation for a little bit, I mean,
go for it, Sam. Go for it, Sam.
Yeah,
I don't want to be rude.
Yeah,
I don't
could I
want
ask
to
one question?
hearing. But Jamal, do you remember my 2 questions?
Yeah, let Jamal answer Sam's question. I really wanted to have Sam drive this one because while we got him here.
Your question was, what is the encoder?
Yeah, and what's the decoder?
Well, look at the map.
Well, I'm asking you. I'm not asking. I mean, I can go through this map on my own time. I mean, just saying.
Okay, well, according to Yaki,
me handing you a paper that you're not familiar with, and then saying, "Well, just look at Figure 2." Well, I mean, I would walk you through it.
According to Yaki, it's the DNA alphabet to the mRNA alphabet. That's the encoding, right? And the decoding is the mRNA message to proteins. And that's within the system, right?
But
that
your
me
definition
like,
your definition explicitly says that there has to be an encoder and a decoder, which is to say that those two people are agents. I mean, what you're doing is you're placing a label on a biological process and saying this is the point of decoding without actually saying what a label is.
Well, I'm not an expert in this area. I'm just referencing.
I'm not asking you to be an expert, but I mean, you would agree that this is integral to your definition on this page.
Well, I'm just referencing Yaki. He's the expert, so I mean.
Well,
but Yaki doesn't answer it in this figure.
Well, I'm pretty sure in his book he would get into more details.
Well, that's great if it's in Yaki's book, but why should I accept that at face value? I mean, you're unfamiliar enough with the field to say that he's the foremost bioinformatician. I mean, Eric Lander, I think, would be well ahead of him. Eugene Koonin. I could name tons of scientists that actually impact the field of bioinformatics on a very high level, such that I've had to study the methods they've made. So, like, I'm wondering why. I mean, I'm just wondering, if there isn't if you're not going to label an encoder or a decoder, and you're just going to toss me an entire book to read, I mean, why should I take the argument seriously?
You don't have to. I'm just referencing Yaki. If you have a problem with that, then.
I mean, I've just outlined a very good problem with that, which is that, I mean, I have no reason to accept this. I mean, if you're just going to throw a book at me and say that I'm wrong because I haven't read a book, well, I mean, then you're wrong for not reading statistical methods in bioinformatics.
That's fine. I'm not twisting your arm to take my position, but
I'm asking you for a legitimate argument. I mean,
like I said, this is not my area of expertise. I'm just referencing.
But I get that, right? Is like if I reference a finding, I didn't do the primary research, but I'm also not going to accept an argument unless I understand it.
Okay, that's fine.
Is that not a fair criticism of what you're doing?
Okay, and I'm not criticizing you for criticizing me for this. Okay, so.
But okay, then what point do we actually? I mean, since you don't understand the code argument, why are you making it?
So what's your issue with Yaki's map here? Is it just because he doesn't really specifies how it's really?
I don't really see. I mean, I don't really see a reason why I need to accept this schema. Like, I don't see what it adds to any sort of research. Right? There's a structure. I'll give you an example of what I mean. This was something that I've had lab mates work on and that I currently work on a lot. Is there's this structure in a biological database called the gene ontology, and what it is it's basically a systematic map of genetic functions. And I'm not going to go into it because I could, do a 30-minute lecture on it, but let's not do that. But the thing is that when you categorize things by these functions and then you use that map to then extend it using data and to understand things that are going on in the cell when these particular genes are affected, you actually understand things via this map, via this model. I'm staring at this model right now, and I don't know what I gain from it other than he's arbitrarily labeling these things because he likes it within his framework. I mean, what insight do I actually gain from this scientifically?
Well, would you agree that the model or the map is similar to the mathematical theory of communication?
Not particularly, but I mean, there's some similarity. Have you read, I mean, this is another question, have you read Claude Shannon's paper, A Mathematical Theory of Communication?
No.
Oh, okay, then, I mean, doesn't that kind of be, I mean, here's the thing, right, is if I make an argument, I don't reference findings I don't understand. And maybe that's just me being persnickety, but it doesn't really represent, I mean, it doesn't really seem that similar to what Shannon presents, in my opinion. I mean, yeah, there are similarities, but how is that not just a retrofitting of what's going on? I mean, how is it not Yaki just imposing information theory onto the biological system rather than actually creating a good model of it scientifically?
Okay, well...
Like if I go into the lab and I want to use this tool, would it actually be useful? That's fundamentally what I'm asking.
Okay.
I don't think it is. I think it's just a way of make it as analogy, isn't it? I don't think he's trying to get anything useful for you to use in the lab or make any predictions or anything.
So let me ask you a question. So you agree that DNA contains coded information?
Sure.
Okay. Is there anything else like that in nature that is not an intelligent source that we know of?
Is there anything? Well, I mean, you're kind of asking a circular question, right? Is because anything that has DNA's properties is going to be a genetic molecule of life, or a genetic structure of life, and DNA obviously outcompeted other genetic structures. I mean, with a few exceptions.
So what you're saying is?
So I mean, yes, is DNA unique? Yes, certainly, but I don't really see. I mean, I also don't see anything that has developed like it from human. From human source code, other than when people write evolutionary algorithms.
Sam, can Fiona ask a question real quick?
Sure.
And Jamal, you're getting so much feedback, my friend.
Okay, so
hang on. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off on the topic. You're getting so much feedback. So Jamal, please, when you're not talking, just mute, talk, unmute, and go back because we're all getting this seriously bad echo here. Can we go ahead and let Fiona ask a question real quick because I think this is actually a really good question.
Yeah, I'd like to know, well, actually, there's a couple of things. One of them is a bit longer. It's about Yaki. But my main question is this. Earlier, ages ago, Jamal said that DNA was polyspecified. what does Jamal mean by poly-specified?
I said highly specified. It contains
Highly, right, okay. So, right, so what do you mean by highly specified?
Well, there's a formal definition that intelligent design proponents use. Want me to go to the
What
website?
about the definition that
No,
you
no, no, no,
use,
no, no, no.
Jamal, because doing this where you make the excuse where you say, oh, well, this is what, I mean, I'm asking you, I'm not in a discussion with Hubert Yaki right now. I mean, if you just want to say this is my personal opinion and I accept what these people say and maybe we can have a discussion about it later and have productive, I'm willing to do that, right? If you want to do that. But if we're going to have a discussion in the here and now, you can't just brush aside what questions people ask you. I mean, that's kind of arguing in bad faith.
Yeah, the point is this. You say it's highly specified. Specified by what?
Yes. By who?
What? Yeah, what specified?
Time to
DNA.
unmute.
It's such an ambiguous statement when people talk about specified information.
Actually, very precise, Steve. It's
Okay.
very precise.
But the thing is you won't.
What specified
In
Can I have an answer, please?
There is something very specific, but how IDs use it is ambiguous. How there is actually specified information, no question, but how they're using it is ambiguous.
No.
The analogy that I would
by-
give is that this is actually really Steve liked this one, which was that if I give you all of the equations for and I do have some experience with actually using information theory to quantify the information at translation initiation start sites. I'll send you that article, by the way, Rumpus, because I know you're going to ask for it. But
Yeah, I love it.
and I know the two co-authors because one of them was my master's thesis advisor. But so I'll send you that, not in the side chat because I'm totally doc dropping myself. But what was I saying? But if I look at the equations for quantifying the uncertainty in and the statistical distribution of events in the genome, specificity is really not something that comes up like the way that Jamal's talking about it. It's the same thing with when I talked with Tommy. I go, okay, if randomness is such a cornerstone in population genetics and evolution, then why isn't that there's a parameter? Why is it that there's no parameter for randomness in any population genetics equations?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the proof's ultimately in the pudding, right? How are these terms actually used?
That's one of my favorite things you've ever said, by the way, Sam.
Well, thank you. I like to think that I have my moments.
Yeah, no, it's a really good argument. It's really good.
I mean, what do you? This is a great question. What do you mean by specified?
Okay, it seems like we're getting into a game of semantics here. I mean,
it's not semantics. You're mentioning terms.
This is my question. This is the question that I have asked you. What do you mean when you say that DNA is specified?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, DNA code codes for different proteins, right?
Yes, that doesn't mean it's
doesn't have to, but it can.
But, okay, yeah, but we know that DNA code had it has meaning, right? In reality, it has meaning, right?
Doesn't answer the question.
That's not answering the question, and I mean that's
what does
a
it
whole
deal
different
with this myself,
discussion.
What specified it?
I mean, you know when you see it. I mean,
that's not an argument, though. I can just easily say I don't see it, which I don't.
I mean, I could read music, right? I mean, I see,
That's
just
great. DNA is not music.
I said, how about not even a definition? Why don't you just give it a concept of what you mean by it, though? Give us a conceptual understanding of it. You don't have to define it. Just what do you conceptually do you mean when you say, that something is specified information?
Okay, well, if I
Just bear in mind, I know what Fiona's going to try and say exactly. The specified means it's the object of a function. Say, I specify something, and if something is specified, that means something had to specify. Now, we know that DNA does lots of specifying of amino acids and proteins, but you've claimed not that it does a lot of specifying, but that it has been specified by something else. What is this something else you're claiming?
Hang on, let's give you only like 5 minutes, just one-on-one, because, I mean, she knows quite a bit about this stuff. I really want her to go down her argument with this, because
Well, I think everybody else has just done it for me.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I obviously need so much help from everybody else.
Sorry.
Guys, I can make my own arguments.
We'd like to see you jumping up and down, I think, Fiona.
Damn you, Rumpus. Damn you.
Yeah, I can actually make my own arguments. I might be female, but I can do it. So anyway, Jamal, what do you mean by specified? So far, your answer has told me that it is specifying, but you haven't explained how it's specified.
Well, maybe it specifies like a certain function. I mean, if it was...
That doesn't, no, again, you're telling me what it specifies, but you're not telling me why it's specified itself.
Because if it wasn't specified, we wouldn't have any kind of function from the code, right?
No, that doesn't. What you're saying is it has to be specified because it's specified. That's not an argument.
No, if it wasn't specified, then we wouldn't have. It wouldn't code for anything, right?
No. That means it's specifying, not that it is itself specified. Let me give you an example. I can say to you, yesterday I painted. Active voice of the verb. Or I could say, yesterday I was painted. Passive voice of the verb. Means somebody took a paintbrush and slathered me in paint. Completely different. I was painting, I was painted. You are stating that DNA is specified, and the evidence you're trying to give me is how DNA specifies. It's two different things. You can call it semantics if you want, but it's actually a crucial difference.
Yeah.
It's the difference between painting and being painted. So, what is specifying the DNA? How is DNA specified?
I'll get back to you on that one.
He's finally understood the difference between a subject and an object.
Hey, you know what? Hey, come on, guys. Let's be realistic here. At least Jamal is being intellectually honest right now.
Yes,
yes, that's fair.
And you got to remember that Jamal has changed his position in the past. He does actually go research this stuff. So, I mean, he did exactly what I think is the most honorable and intellectually thing that a person could possibly do right now. Huge props.
But one other thing can I bring up, please?
Yes.
Which I think is important because he's bringing in Yaki. Jade put the link to the blog in the side. Now, Yaki has said quite a lot of things, but I will point out that Hubert Yaki accepts evolution absolutely. And if you look at his blog and you go to the About Hubert Yaki bit, you'll come up with all the various references, and then you'll see his answers to intelligent design. And he points out that when it comes to evolution, gaps in the fossil record are not valid objections to evolution. And he also points out that objections to Darwin's theory of evolution that claim, well, it doesn't explain the origin of life. That is a deliberate deception, because Darwin never set out to explain the origin of life. He also states that life is not irreducibly complex. He does not accept that life is irreducibly complex. That's one of the foundations of intelligent design.
Yeah.
He also points out introducing a requirement for an intelligent designer is ad hoc and invalid. Explorations of the requirement for an intelligent designer almost invariably are inferred from non-living matter, usually a machine of some kind. Machines require an intelligent designer to exist or evolve because they do not have a genome. Living things do not require an ad hoc intelligent designer to live and evolve because they do have a genome. The crux of intelligent design theory is therefore to maintain that the intelligent designer substitutes for the genome in evolution. However, the genome evolves through a random walk and has no need of an intelligent designer. That's exactly what Hubert Yaki states.
And this is also what he said, so I don't know his where he's coming from. I know he's an evolutionist, but he also said something like this. This is from Yaki. The reason that there are principles of biology that cannot be derived from the laws of physics and chemistry lies simply in the fact that the genetic information content of the genome for constructing even the simplest organisms is much larger than the information content of these laws. The existence of a genome and the genetic code divides living organisms from non-living matter. There is nothing in the physical chemical world that remotely resembles reactions being determined by a sequence and codes between sequences. And he also said that if genetic processes were just complicated biochemistry, the laws of mass action and thermodynamics would govern the placement of amino acids in the protein sequences, but they don't.
Wait. So I'm kind of confused here. Is he saying that you can't give a historical causal explanation,
Yeah.
or is he saying, Jamal, please mute. I thought Jamal was interrupting me for a second. Oh, or is he just saying that you can't really reduce the laws of biology to the laws of chemistry or physics, because those are two different things? I'm kind of curious about that.
I mean, I've heard a bunch of people make this argument before, and it doesn't really hold sway, especially when you talk about, the Rumpus was talking about an article where he was like, holy crap, codon context actually is chemically relevant, which is mind-blowing, isn't it, Rumpus?
Yeah.
And I actually ended up using that idea in my master's thesis, which was interesting. But the idea, not my master's thesis, boring as shit. But yeah, the main argument seems to hinge on the idea that there's no deterministic chemistry that says that, for instance, what would be a good example, just off the top of my head, in terms of, let's say that UAG is a stop codon, for instance, that there's no real deterministic, but, it is historically contingent, right, as these systems got linked up. It's a similar objection to sort of why are all amino acids in life believe that for the most part, they're left-handed, which isn't true. There's some bacteria with right-handed amino acids. It's because, systems tend to favor one or the other, and the second that you get an asymmetry between one or the other, it's going to favor that, and it happens to be that ancient asymmetry that's conserved across, eukarya and, what we recognize as multicellular complex life. And so I don't find the argument convincing, because historical contingencies, as we know, are incredibly important in evolution and in the development of life historically. And I think we should expect, based on the record, that there are certain things that may not have been, either advantageous or straightforward at the time. They just happen to be a historical accident.
Let me ask you then, Jade wants to chime in real quick. First of all, real quick, theological master, I've invited you to come in do these hangouts, so if you want to come in, by all means come in. I've talked to him before. He has very much like Brandon-ish type of intelligent design avocation. So just to throw that out there, he's in the side chat. You want to come in, I'll find room for you. The second thing is there any particular reason why AUG is a start codon and not a stop? I mean, is there any reason, chemically speaking, why it codes for methionine as a start in the amino acid chain in eukaryotes? Is it particular? I mean, is there an understanding of why that particularly does it? Oh, the shit, he left.
Yeah, Sam's gone.
Well, Fiona can answer that question then.
I need to look. I need to actually look it up.
I mean, I just wonder if there's any particular reason why these codons, will code for a specific amino acid. I mean, if you look at what he has up, and what he posted, one of the things in the screen share is DNA code, which we found it is the same guy. I mean, he's talking about eventually we get over here the decoding and translation. Okay, so you have these aminoactyl tRNA come in, and that's from the aminoactyl tRNA synthase. So let's say that you have the the tRNA synthase puts the aminoactyl tRNA together and it puts it to the ribosome, and then all of a sudden, let's say it puts the wrong anticodon with it. So it's going to put a wrong amino acid onto the chain coming out of the ribosome. They call that the genetic noise. But my question is, why do we have the RNA synthase chart or the RNA synthesis chart? Why do the codons actually code for specific amino acids? Is there a particular reason for that?
You need to go through tRNA synthesis pathways for each one.
So it is basic. It is a chemical thing for the tRNA synthase that.
I think you need to go through that and find out how each one is synthesized.
It could be done then. It's complicated as hell, obviously, but it could be done.
Yes, it is. It is.
Okay. I was curious. I never really thought about that before.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jade.
Yeah, I wanted to say three quick things. First of all, when we're talking about what Yaki said, remember, we're not going from Yaki, we're going from this guy's website and what he said Yaki said. Yaki may have said a lot more stuff in his book, and this is just a small part of it, so we don't know what Yaki said. Secondly, a minor point, on the website he says that he's got this information from Yaki's book published in 2005. That was a second reprint. The book was originally published in 1992. And you should always, originally in 1992, you should always be specific when you're making links. The third thing, which is just kind of cool, on April 15th, which is tax day for us here in the United States, on April 15th, Hubert Yaki will be 100 years old.
Wow. Just wow.
Yeah, I know. I just had to throw that in because I think it's cool.
Fun fact.
Yeah, good going. If you make 100 years. Okay.
One last thing, Steve. Just for people who are listening, on Steve's G+ under this, where he's talking about this hangout, I put the links to Hubert Yaki's site and the two links that this guy, I can't think of his name, the engineers that we're talking about. So if anybody wants to know what those are, or if anybody wants to know, just let me know. Okay, so.
Oh, if I could request something, if teleology master comes back or decides to come in here, I really want to ask him the same question I asked Jamal earlier about why his argument isn't either fallacious or redundant. I don't think Jamal really answered that one.
Yeah, no, he didn't. But he said he would look into it. But a teleological master, I ran into him. Jade, can I just meet you for a second? Okay. I ran into him on one of the forums, and he gave me an argument that I wasn't quite familiar with before. I knew what it was because it had to do with computer programming. It had to do with factorials. It had to do with blowing up of combinatorial functions. He called it the combinatorial explosion problem of some sorts. And he said that the evolution couldn't exist because of that. Well, I did a little more research on it and found out they're completely unrelated things. They're completely unrelated concepts. And I knew mathematically, if you have a function that is factorials, you can get this explosive thing that just blows up, okay? And I didn't mean that figuratively, not literally, a mathematical function. Because it goes to infinity. But he's trying to say that these things are somehow a model that prevents evolution. I don't find anything in the literature. I don't find any study. I don't find anything when I looked into that of how that relates. So theological masters, if you want to come in there and address those things, that's fine. Let's move on to the next thing for this guy, because this is about the engineer. We're going to move on to his next 7 biological myths. I wish Sam had a gun. It's gone. This is right up his alley. 90%. Show this. Okay. So 90% of your DNA is junk, an accumulation of evolutionary leftovers from random mutations over millions of years. Jade, I'm gonna let you take this one if that's okay. This is too geeky. Yeah, I mean, this is comical. You want to address this one, or Fiona?
Can you present it so we can see it?
I want to hear it. What's the argument?
Well, he's saying, okay, can you guys see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've read it. He says supposedly like 1,000% of the DNA is useful. Like 1,000%.
So he's claiming that 90% of your DNA is junk, an accumulation of evolutionary leftovers from random mutations of many years, which is funny because I just had a thing with rational theist Matt Bell saying that he claims that there is no such thing as junk DNA. 0. So we have one guy that says 0, and this guy says 97.
Yeah, but idiots talk lots of bollocks. There are lots of ways of being an idiot.
So somebody let's reconcile this. Jade or Fiona, why don't you guys explain what junk DNA really is and how much of the genome actually is, and how the hell does that relate to his argument?
Okay, the term junk DNA was coined at the beginning of the 1970s by a chap called Ono, O-H-N-O. Now, what they were referring to when they spoke about that was DNA that doesn't code for a known protein. And back in the early 1970s, we had very little information. Okay? Now, nobody has ever said that junk DNA is rubbish, is useless, and all the rest of it. Because as early as the 1980s, I was being taught about those regions of the DNA which do not code for a protein, but which have a very, very crucial function. Things like promoter regions. They're upstream of the coding sequence. Your -10 and your -35 bits, Pribno box, etc. So already you've got control mechanisms encoded in DNA. Doesn't code for a protein. But that is the type of stuff that was meant as junk, as in it doesn't code for a protein. And nobody's ever denied that promoters exist.
So hang on, so you're saying originally the term junk DNA was meant to, let's say, like you said, in the DNA you have the promoter region before it. That part of that DNA fragment for the promoter region, they call that junk DNA because that specific part didn't have anything to do with the actual encoding of the protein. This is where the polymerase comes from.
Yes.
Okay.
It was.
I did not even know that. That's
and as I say, when we're talking about the early 1970s, and now remember, PCR wasn't even thought up until the second half of the 1980s. And PCR was the tool that allowed us to amplify up enough of the target DNA that we could then sequence it. So we could specifically pick a piece of DNA that we wanted to know about and amplify that piece and that piece alone to actually get the DNA to work with. Previously, we just end up with having to isolate DNA from loads of cells, and then you're trying to home in on your one wee target, and it wasn't easy. PCR opened the door for all of this. And as I say, that was in the late 1980s, Carrie Mullis. Would you believe it? It came to him when he was driving in his car. It's really annoying that, because it's such a simple technique. Why nobody thought of it before? Don't know. Anyway, so when we come to the present day and we look at the ENCODE project, ENCODE's a beauty, but there's a problem in it. They decided to define functional in a very broad sense of the word. They used a different definition from the one that Ono had used. Okay? Completely different definition. So if they found any biological, not even just biological activity, but an interaction, they said that is functional. Now, that was the same as saying that if you find a piece of chewing gum stuck on the bottom of your shoe, It's functional. It's stuck to the bottom of the shoe. That's the level of some of the interactions were that enabled them to then say that something was functional because it did something. Chewing gum sticks to the bottom of your shoe, therefore it's functional. Its function is to stick to the bottom of your shoe. Now, Ono had estimated that 6% of the genome would be functional, okay? And the ENCODE project trumpeted 80% as functional. But they'd used this very broad definition. However, Ewan Burney, the project manager of ENCODE, has stated that if they go back to the original narrow definition that Ono had used, then the percentage of functional DNA in the genome goes up to between 8 to 9% from 6. Not 18, not 80. 8 to 9. So Ono estimated it was about 6, but we had very little of the sequence. So that was a guesstimate. Using the same definition, the ENCODE project has come up with a figure that's very close to it, between 8 and 9%. But because the ENCODE project decided to broaden the definition and then go with a press release of 80%, this has introduced a massive misunderstanding. So now what we keep getting is, ha ha, all that stuff you said was junk isn't junk because ENCODE says. But they're not actually understanding that even the project director himself says if they use the original definition so that he can get comparable figures, the figures are actually very close. And quite a number of the workers on the ENCODE project dissented from this trumpeting of the 80% figure because they said it was misleading because of the way they had used such a broad definition that you're reduced to saying, well, the function of chewing gum is to stick to the bottom of your shoe. Even if they just got 2 proteins that stuck together or a message that stuck to something, even if it was a non-specific interaction, they called it functional. And we know that proteins can, completely non-specifically, stick to glass. We know protein does that. It sticks to glass. That doesn't mean its function is to stick to glass. Mm-hmm. So that's where this big difference in numbers has come from. Changing the definition of functional.
Well, his argument is
not in unearthing functions that we didn't know about. It's changing the definition.
I mean, did you read the what he went into detail about this 90% of your junk is DNA, which again, kind of, I don't know how anybody could get to that number, but he's actually relating it to informational context because he's an engineer and he does computer engineering. He's talking about, it basically saying, does anyone believe or anybody think that Microsoft Windows Vista is more sophisticated than the human body?
Yeah.
He's like, actual fact, DNA is not 3% efficient. It's more like 1,000% efficient. But I mean, I don't know what I don't even know where to begin with this. It just makes no sense to me when he's sitting there talking about how much informational content. The junk is 22 megabytes of information.
Because he doesn't know what the term junk means.
Yeah, there's
doesn't know what that means. He doesn't know what it refers to. Right. He doesn't know that it's talking about non-coding.
Right. And there's a saying that isn't completely accurate, but nevertheless I like it. That says, they say, the difference between junk DNA and garbage DNA is junk is kind of like the stuff you have in your garage that you aren't using at the moment, and garbage is the stuff you throw out in the trash.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I really like Fiona's bubblegum analogy. I thought that was brilliant. Did you come up with it yourself, or did you get that from somewhere? Because that was really good.
And I do have to say that this 1,000% efficient just makes me laugh because he's supposed to be an engineer. There is no such thing as 1,000% efficient. Something can be 100% efficient, except in reality, nothing is 100%.
Right, you always have losses. But the
thing is, what he's doing.
How do you have 1,000% efficiency?
Well, what he's doing is he's saying a gene can have more than one function, which somehow makes it 1,000% efficient. No, if a gene has more than one function and it's doing those all properly, then it's 100% efficient.
Correct.
No such thing as 1,000%. That's an incredibly stupid statement coming from an engineer. I mean, I would even accept something like that from like a physicist, but at engineers, they work to specifics. I mean, I know my dad was an engineer. He'd ask me, what the error margin was on something if I asked him a question. It's ridiculous.
That was probably the weirdest one in here. I think it doesn't make much sense to me either. Let's move on to the next one. This one I don't have that much issue with per se. It says you only need 3 things for evolution to occur: heredity, variation, and selection. I think he means selective pressures. If it gets you to boil it down to the bare basics, what else would you throw in there besides heredity, variation? And when I say selection, I'm going to throw selective pressures in there. That one, I don't know what his argument is either with, because that's...
Well, what his argument is he is comparing this with computer viruses or a copy of Windows XP or the Eagles Hotel California. Yeah, seriously.
I don't.
In other words, knowing life. And
oh crap! There it worked. Sorry.
Computer viruses and Windows XP and copies of the Eagles Hotel California do not reproduce imperfectly.
Yeah, and
they're not alive.
What he's talking about is something that's not relevant to biological systems. It's a copy fade. There's another term for it. I can't think of it. As a matter of fact, interestingly enough, Kate Wilhelm, I always want to say Wilhelm, Kate Wilhelm wrote a book about this where the human race could only perpetuate by cloning, and over the generations you got what's called copy fade. And this is what you see when you take a Xerox, you Xerox something, right? And you get that copy. Then you Xerox that copy, and it's not as good as the first copy. Then you Xerox that copy, and it's not as good as that copy. So over time you get copy fade. And I know there's a better term for it. I can't think of it right now. And that's what he's saying. It doesn't work that way in biological systems. This is a really basic misunderstanding of how biology works. And he's looking at it from this engineering point of view of copy fade.
Yeah, it's basically in any system. If you do a copy, there's always going to be imperfections that result. If you Xerox a copy, you Xerox another copy, you're going to have imperfections. The mutations in from one generation to another. That's what makes evolution work. That's what makes species continue. The fact that there is variation. So why does he think? Because he's trying to think that these mutations are somehow negative. Like, if you had a song, let's say you had a DVD, and let's say you copy the DVD, and every so often there's a binary misstep, and so something in the audio changes, and so a million copies later on the air, let's say it doesn't do the error correctly, the cylindrical, or was it the cyclic redundancy check correctly, there's errors propagating in there, and so the final thing a billion years from now is audio that's completely noise. That's how he's thinking about this.
Yeah.
And that's
it is a complete misunderstanding of biology.
Yes.
It's awful. It is absolutely awful.
What can go wrong, right?
This is why engineers do engineering and biologists do biology.
Yeah, this is complete yes, this idea that you have to have just heredity, variation, selection, and therefore computer viruses have variation is bollocks. They don't have any variation that happens to them. They might have variations that you build into them what they're going to do, but the variation obviously in biology is random, happening in various places. Computer viruses don't do that. They don't randomly change in arbitrary parts of the code.
Exactly.
I thought they had mutating viruses, like some certain Trojans that actually did something like that. Polymorphic.
Yeah, but they did it in a deterministic way. You have a you have a virus that will say if it's if the disk drive has got 2 disks or something, I'll give myself a different name or something. So the range of where the variation occurs is very well specified. Or it might break itself into 2 bits of code, give itself a different name, go onto a different drive the next time. It can vary. It's got a limited parameters. The domain of its change is very well specified by the code. The code it's always going to vary in that way, whereas obviously the variation that occurs in biology is arbitrary and can affect it in any way. It's not comparable at all. What a plonker!
What a plonker! This is my favorite one that I read. I mean, this. Who does this remind you of? Give me a name after I read this off to you, because I'm screen sharing right now. Right? Biology is nothing more than sophisticated physics and chemistry. Who says that biology is more than just physics and chemistry? That would be true empiricism.
I was going to say, because that makes no sense. I've never heard anyone in the sciences say that biology is nothing more than sophisticated chemistry and physics. Seriously?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things involved in this topic. How can you just distill it down? Now we do say biological things like for bonds, chemical bonds. I would say that obviously this is chemistry. I get that, but to say that biology is reduced to physics and chemistry, are you fucking crazy?
Well, but ultimately everything is down to physics, isn't it?
Yes,
I mean, you can argue, but it's so far. It's like saying numbers. You could ultimately say it's all down to maths.
Okay, great. Okay, you got me. If you do a reductum, everything goes down to eventually physics. But I mean, but in the realm of biology, it's so vast that for example, informational systems. That's in biology. How do you relate that to physics? You do it with math, but there's so many different other subjects included. I mean, if you want to distill it all down to physics, you might be able to make an argument from physicists.
Well, I've described this as it depends on the zoom level that you're looking at.
Yeah.
And so you can look at the organism, or zoom in and look at an organ, or zoom in and look at the tissues of that organ, or zoom in and look at the cells, or zoom in and look at the biochemical processes going on within a single cell, or zoom in on a certain protein and look at what that protein is doing. And then you would zoom into the molecular level on the protein and see how the various atoms that make up the protein interact with other atoms. And then you can zoom in even further, and you know that the interaction of atoms with other atoms comes down to basic physics. So you can, it's a zoom level.
I gave the rumpus the other day existential crisis because I ran an argument with him that he had to question his own reality. I mean, his own existence, because I basically ran an argument that you don't exist because of all the amount of space.
I mean, if there's something more than chemistry, what is it?
Yeah, well, that's talking about like the DNA level, right? I mean, when we say to true that it's just chemistry, that's what we're talking about. He's not saying that DNA. This guy's saying biology can be reduced just to physics and chemistry. And
but that's the point I'm making. Yes, it can. Because
I disagree with you. Information systems neither.
You look at the organism. You can then, as I said, zoom in and look at an organ of the organism. You can zoom in and look at the tissue of the organ. You can look at the cells of the tissue. You can look at the cellular components of the cell. You can look at the molecules that make up those cellular components. Then you can look at the atoms that make up the molecules.
Yeah, I mean,
it's zoom level.
Okay, for example, if I say, like, let's talk about real quickly. How about if I say like the electron transport thing, and I talk about electrons and electricity between the neurons and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, you could probably go into physics, but that's considered to be, electrical. Are you saying that eventually everything's enclosed in physics? Because I think it was Max Hangs Out or somebody the other day actually said if you go to Wikipedia and you do enough iterations, you go to enough links, it always will go back to a page on philosophy.
Well, and I put
that wasn't me.
It was interesting, but
I put his exact statement in here, and the thing is, if you look at it, the way Fiona's pointing out is if you keep dialing in, eventually it is chemistry and physics. But his statement is biology is nothing more than sophisticated physics and chemistry. That's like saying the internet is nothing more than sophisticated copper wire and silicon chips. Guess what? If you dial in, it is.
Yeah, I think that's the problem that they.
Well, there is some software as well.
What is the more?
Now remember, he's not advocating that position. I mean, he's stating that biology is nothing more than sophisticated chemistry. That's the paradigm. He's not advocating that exact position. He's advocating against it. So it has to be.
Yeah, that's right. He's challenging that claim.
He's challenging the claim, correct?
Yeah, and so I'm asking, what is the more? What is the more?
He doesn't actually say, does he?
No. I've read the thing. It has to do with literally like copying CDs and Windows XP and.
Effectively just says it isn't.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds go back to all those things are information. So DNA, chemicals are just the hardware.
Yeah, I suppose here's the thing. It says until the biology profession accepts that the real power in biology is in the information, the software, not the chemicals, it will continue to slam to brick walls and put forth evolutionary theories that make wrong predictions.
Yeah.
So he's basically he's all keen on this information business and the software, which obviously is, that is the biology does have, this information that does things, and it is very different to.
The information works the way it works because of the chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
It's the chemistry.
Well, hold on. You saying the chemistry is influencing the information that's stored? Because I was arguing it doesn't.
No. No, I said works. I said the information wouldn't work in the way it does without the chemistry. It's chemistry that forces A to only pair with a T.
Right. But
because there's only both A and T are only able to form 2 hydrogen bonds, whereas C and G need 3.
Yeah, but you're almost implying though that the chemistry is limiting what information you can store, and it doesn't.
No, that's not what I said. No.
Okay.
What I said was the way that information is able to function.
Yeah, but that doesn't
And
mean that's not the issue,
though. The first thing it has to be able to do is copy itself.
Yes, but he's abstracting from that and saying he wants to just talk about the information, the fact that the chemical process is irrelevant. I mean, it could have a completely different chemical process, and it wouldn't make any difference to the information concept in the DNA.
But what I'm saying is that information wouldn't function the way it does.
Well, when you say the way it functions, I mean, the point about the information, I mean, the idea of the information is that you've got a coding for creating a protein, and essentially it's just, here I'm making this bit of protein from this information. The chemistry could be completely different from how it gets from that information to the protein. That's what he's basically saying, and the mechanism is irrelevant.
No, I don't think so. If you don't have this base pairing and the fidelity of the base pairing, then that information, that DNA, couldn't actually do anything.
Oh, well, obviously not. Yes, it's limited. The chemistry has to work, and if it didn't work, it would be a different chemistry. Okay,
yeah,
well,
that's what I'm saying.
By the way, I've read somewhere that in fact these Crick pair, Watson and Crick pairs actually don't necessarily have to match. They can actually pair to different ones, but it's all the error correction system that makes sure it actually goes to the right one.
That's that can happen. That's how you get weird things happening with various intercalating agents, things like that. These things that cause that to happen are called carcinogens.
Right. Yeah. So
that you end up with wrong pairings during DNA replication. They're called carcinogens. We know about them.
Right. Yeah.
All right, let's move on a little bit. Joe, I sent you the link. I sent you the invite. I would never exclude you from my hangout, Joe. So Joe's come on in. The next one is really strange because I don't think anybody here would ever agree with this statement. Genetic algorithms prove Darwinian evolution. Who the fuck? Who would ever make such a claim? There's so many things wrong with that.
They can illustrate it.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, so there's one. Sorry, Fiona.
Yeah, I would say they can illustrate it.
Okay. Illustrating's fine. Demonstrating's fine. Yeah. How do you prove Darwinian evolution? And by the way, we already established the other day that Darwinian evolution is, of course, out of date. But so why does it matter?
Well, they do demonstrate. They can be very useful to demonstrate the process of sort of self-modifying. I mean, things like you can. I think it's a chap who designed a propeller or something. Oh no! Oh, the classic one is the one that Steve Jones did about. He used to work in a chemistry in a washing powder factory or something, and they were trying to design a spray jet, and they had several very clever people trying to design this more efficient spray jet, which would turn, I think, the what was a liquid, and then it would, as it came out of this jet at high pressure, it would then cool down very rapidly and form a dust. It would then become the washing powder. And they had very clever people trying to work out what the best way of designing the nozzle was that did this. And in the end, some biologist type bloke came along and said, look, let's just try it with a sort of genetic algorithm. And then it created this most weird, peculiar shape. They have no idea how it works, but it produced a much better quality, or the efficiency of it was much better for having this sort of wiggly shape on it. So you've demonstrated there that genetic algorithms basically sort of, you know, they were hereditary, and they would then select the best one. So it does demonstrate the principle, but obviously proving it's an analogy. So obviously you can't prove it, but you can certainly demonstrate the analogy works. And interesting, in the same bit, he also goes on to say no piece of code works in this way, whereas earlier he was actually saying about the viruses worked in if viruses, computer viruses worked that way, you'd have them copying with this that he claims that computer viruses have this hereditary variation selection, and therefore if that was all you needed, then the computer viruses. And then down here he's saying, oh no, but we don't have code that works like that. I think there's a contradiction anyway.
I also have a problem with the word prove.
Yeah,
exactly.
That was my big issue too.
Just right off the
Who would make that claim? The next one, Jade.
Oh.
I'll say the best for last, which is 7, which comes last, anyways. But the human eye is a pathetic design. It's got a big blind spot, and the wires are installed backwards, which is true. His argument goes into basically like resistors. I didn't particularly read this one, so I'm going to let you completely take this one. I don't know what we argue against that, because that is a fact. The human eye is not really the best type of engineering it could be, the way it's designed. So go ahead.
Well, let me look at this. As he said, I had to produce an indicator lamp assembly for a piece of equipment. The design had a light bulb and 2 identical resistors, which I thought were stupid. I suggest we replace the 2 resistors with 1 resistor of twice the value. This would save money and space. Oh dear God, this is ridiculous. I told the customer the design was obviously lousy. The engineer got angry and almost took his business elsewhere. Then my boss spent 30 minutes lecturing me. He reminded me that my job was to put the customer's product into production, not insult him with my warped critique of his design skills.
Kind of like the warped critique of his biology?
The next bit is a gem.
Yeah, what I didn't know was that 600 volts would arc across 1 resistor, but not across 2. A second redundant resistor was an elegant way to solve that problem, and it only cost 2 cents. I learned the hard way, when you criticize a design, you may have a very incomplete picture of the many constraints the designer has to work within. What constraints?
Or you just get a resistor that has a higher voltage rating.
Yeah.
But Jade, what that says there is that here we have this engineer who is critiquing outside of his field, admitting that even within his own field, he caught up.
Yeah, that
exactly.
Is definitely fall into his own purview. Yeah.
And by the way, it's something very basic.
Yeah. So what he's basically saying here is that the design of the eye, he thinks we shouldn't call it bollocks, because he thinks it's probably rather clever, and we just don't appreciate why it's so clever. That's his basic point.
This is why I really dislike the design argument for theological reasons. I know it's weird, but even theologians argue and attack the arguments of other theologians. I'm not a theologian myself, but theologically speaking, if we're going to say that God has some limits that he has to deal with, it kind of ruins certain things like aseity and omnipotence. And I just don't generally like to deal with that.
You know, what's funny is one of the greatest things about evolution is, because we had discussed before, is that it has to exist. It has to work with existing things. I mean, it can't just create new shit. That's the whole happy aspect. We see that the fact that the way we are, the way mammalian animals are. It came from some plan that was earlier, and that it just built upon that, and whatever happened, happened. I mean, we could have been a lot better, but we already have things that are already, not the best way to be designed. But see, other things were better, and so the bad came with the good, and so it's just we are here.
And the other thing is, and of course, the other thing is we know that the proper way of designing actually works. Things like octopuses actually have the wiring around the right way. So I think we're quite justified in making the criticism.
And I would like to point out that the fact that as Fiona put that in the comments too, that what about the octopus eye, which is superior, is superior to our eye, and as far as I'm concerned, that just proves that God is in fact Cthulhu.
So, I mean, when like atheists make the same argument in reverse, the reductio from terrible design. Well, assuming God did design the eye, then he must be a terrible designer. I mean, often Christians, and I myself do this too, will invoke, well, God might have some unknown reason for doing it in such and such a way, maybe circumstantial, maybe there's aesthetic reasons, I don't know. But at the same time, as soon as I put down that criticism, then I can't just go back and say, well, you see, it is now designed. Wait, didn't you just say about those skepticisms? Couldn't we as evolutionists just say, well, currently we don't know the parameters of why such and such a thing were selected? No, you can't do that. Like that would be unfair the other way around as well.
And I'd like to point out too, he says in there that that the designer essentially has to work within certain constraints, and there's two things I say is like, what constraints is God working under? I mean, seriously, what constraints is God working under?
Right?
The second thing I would like to say is, if you're going to say he's working in with certain biological constraints, namely what came before, then well, that's evolution.
Yeah.
All right. For this last one,
the other bit that is very telling.
Can you guys hear me? Can I?
Yeah, now I can. I've got to move on a little bit, guys. I've got to wrap this up here soon. So this last one here is probably. Oh my God, the worst out of all of these. I'm going to actually read this off. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to go get another Boone's Farm because this one's so bad I need a third one. It says, as you can see, there is no such thing as purpose in nature. There is only the appearance of purpose. Theological is a scientific term which is defined as purpose in nature. Atheism denies theological in the universe, or theology in the universe. Well, theology is not a scientific term. It's a philosophical term. And atheism has nothing to do with theology. It doesn't accept or reject a theological explanation or theonomic. It just says that an atheist would reject the idea of God, the concept of that God exists or not. That's it. It's the only claim it makes. It has no bearing whatsoever to do with methodological naturalism, ontological naturalism, theology. It just says you don't accept there's a God. So I want you guys to address this because this is what here is blatantly. This guy has no idea. Not only about biology, but his understanding of philosophy and theology is completely astronomically wrong. So go ahead. And then he quotes Ernest Mayr, which is, he butchers that shit, so go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, what I would point out is, just looking at the example it gives, the whole point is that if the wood thrush doesn't migrate to where there is food, when there is no food where they are, they will die and not reproduce. Dead animals don't breed. This is just about survival.
What happened? I went to the third one. Everybody's quiet now.
It went, I thought I'd hung. But I mean, we say that they migrate. You can say, they migrate in order to escape the inclement. No, what they do is they go to where there is food, because if they don't, they die. Those that stay behind die.
Yes, it's all about consequences, isn't it?
It is, and the bottom line is, it comes down to dead animals don't breed.
Yeah.
Which is the greatest quote I think you have. Is that dead animals don't reproduce. To go on further on here, I know we have too much time left because I do have to wrap this up. But he goes on, and he's talking about like random mutation theory will be discarded or replaced with transposition, natural genetic engineering, horizontal gene flow, and gene doubling. This is something that Tommy Hall kind of parrots. That doesn't even make any sense. I mean, how is random mutation theory discarded just because we have horizontal gene transfer and transposition? These things have been around for a very long time. What the hell do they got to do with each other? Somebody explain this to me, because they have absolutely nothing fucking to do with each other.
Sorry, I'm just looking further down.
Yeah, I mean, we have a PhD in biology here, so please, I'm at a loss to even understand where this guy's even coming from.
Well, I think you know what he's doing? He's believing in Darwinian evolution. He's saying the random mutation theory. And then he's saying it doesn't take into account things like horizontal gene transfer.
Which is true.
Apparently, he's living in the freaking past.
Could I also point out something?
Yeah, go ahead.
There's just one that I want to point out. I don't know if you've seen it. It says, chemicals have no purpose, organisms do. You cannot formulate a coherent description of life if you deny purpose. Then he says this, spot the problem. For proof of this, look no further than the genetic code. Every codon in DNA maps to an amino acid that it is supposed to make.
Supposed to make, and what? And there are certain things that don't map. Well, there's not.
No, that mapping has got nothing to do with making the amino acids at all.
No.
Every codon in DNA maps to an amino acid that it is supposed to make. No, that it is supposed to use.
That's one of those. That's one of those no, Neffy, no moments.
Yes.
This is getting things backwards again.
When the misunderstanding is that bad, that no, because that codon in the DNA, you get the antisense of it in the messenger RNA, and then the anti-antisense in the transfer RNA that's already got the amino acid stuck on the bottom. So nothing there from transcription into translation has talked about making.
Yeah, but he's just trying to say it's coding for, isn't it? Really, that's what he's trying to say.
No, that's not what he said. No, it says every codon in DNA maps to an amino acid that it is supposed to make.
Yeah, but I think all he's saying is that there's a coding. The codon codes for an amino acid. That's all he's trying to say. Okay.
I'll tell you what.
This is a really fundamental error.
Yeah, I understand what I think he's trying to say on that, but the way he said it,
it's terrible. It's terrible
bad.
Because it's supposed to use it, not make it. Use. There's a big difference between using something and making it. I use a car every day, but I don't go out every morning and make the car.
Yeah.
That is how fundamental that error is in there.
But hold on. But surely the codons do code for an amino acid, and therefore those are whenever the codons are accessed, they actually, surely at the other end of the process in the ribosome, they actually create that amino acid.
No. The amino acid is already attached to the bottom of the transfer molecule.
To the transfer RNA, right? Yes.
Because it's been made by a completely different process.
Right.
Yeah, Rumpus, have you been studying the stuff behind our back?
Sorry?
Yeah.
Have you been brushing up on this stuff behind our back or something? Seriously. And I'm like,
yeah.
Oh.
It's a huge difference between using something and making something. And when you go from DNA to messenger RNA to proteins, you're using already made.
Agreed. Yeah, but he's trying to just say that it's coding for that transfer RNA.
I tell you what, I agree with Fiona that it's wrong, but for principle of charity here, maybe he is an engineer, not a biologist, so
yeah.
I could see Rumpus' point of view on it, Fiona. I really can. Rumpus is not too far.
I can see his point of view, but when you make a mistake like that, when you say it is supposed to make.
Yes, I mean, it's not creating.
The manufacture of amino acids is completely different.
And when you put that together with his basic misunderstanding of biology that he's demonstrated all throughout this thing, I'm not willing to be quite so generous.
Yeah, I think Jade, you're thinking on the head on that one.
He's talking about the purpose in the strand of DNA, and he's saying the purpose of that codon and he's stating that purpose is to make the amino acid.
Yeah, you actually, you actually got more because the last thing says, but an error is possible. Now that does suggest a little bit as though the amino acid is actually being manufactured, doesn't it? But then there's an error in the manufacture of the amino acid rather than the coding for its the transfer. Yeah, so it's a little bit. I still think we know what he's trying to say, but yeah, I mean it's not very well worded.
Well, yeah, and not only that, but I mean, if you're talking about this in biological terms, instead of using the word make, you would use the word synthesize.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah, exactly. So to use the word make is obviously a sort of bloody stupid. Yeah, little somebody. Yeah, it's a very poor sort of unscientific word.
Yeah, and if you put that word synthesize in there, you see how wrong that statement is.
Yeah. I mean, but I'm trying to interpret. He's trying to say it's coding for that amino acid via again the codon. But I must admit the but an error is possible. You see, you could argue that but an error is possible. It could be that the code, the translation is error prone or something, or there's or that the anticodon might not match the codon or something, and therefore you might get that. Yeah. I mean, you've even said yourself that you get the could get the wrong anticodon on a codon.
Yeah, you could have a nonsense mutation, and you get a mutation, sure.
So nonsense
mutation was a mutation that you have a premature stop codon.
Yeah, but you're talking about third base wobble and all the rest of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Wobble, yeah.
But what I'm saying is that when your misunderstanding of what we all love to call the central dogma of molecular biology, when you actually make an error like that in it, then there's a big problem. It's not making. There is no way it's making the amino acids.
Yeah,
when you're talking about that, it is not doing it. And to make an error like that,
all right, let's move on.
Because that completely changes the picture of what DNA to RNA to protein is. Completely changes it.
Yeah, it's a fundamental misunderstanding. But I mean, if it was if it was elementary grade paper, I would let it go. Honestly.
Yeah, I don't think he really believes that it's actually synthesizing the amino acid. I think he's thinking it's being selected for by the code, but he's using bad language to do so.
I think Jade, though, based upon his other things that he's written, he doesn't understand it. But anyways, let's move on to the next thing, which is a couple more things before I got to end this video. Neo-Darwinism will be discarded because biologists will recognize that biological evolution is just like genetic algorithms. It employs pre-programmed goals and educated guesses, not random chance. I don't think anybody here is a neo-Darwinist. Ernest Mayr was a neo-Darwinist, or we don't subscribe. I don't subscribe to neo-Darwinism. I don't know if anybody else here does. Neo-Darwinism, in my opinion, has already been kind of not necessarily discarded, but been incorporated into our paradigm we have now of modern evolutionary synthesis. So, do you consider yourself to be a neo-Darwinist, Fiona? I know Sam doesn't. I don't. I don't think Jay does.
No, I don't consider myself a neo-Darwinist. I accept the current synthesis, and I realize we're moving beyond that.
Yeah, extended synthesis. So
yeah.
So his argument there is really odd. And then the next one, rather than assuming designs in biology are pathetic or stupid, we'll discover deeper reasons for why organisms are the way they are, and greater insights into the subtlety of living things. Well, who the hell says designs are pathetic or stupid? We all think. Again, we've got to take this word back, design. The intelligent design advocates have longed to use this word design and say, look, if it's design, it's got to be teleologic, it's got to be from God. No. One of the greatest achievements that Darwin gave to us was the fact that he was able to explain natural things using teleologic design. He was able to say, this is by natural selection. We show why these things have looked like they have an appearance of design, but they are still designed. They're just teleologically designed. So, yeah, I don't know his argument there either. So I don't understand anything of this guy thing. When I read this from Jade, I was like, what the hell is this? Yeah.
Well, I think it's things like, when we talk about the laryngeal nerve, which was mentioned above, I think Rumpus mentioned it, in the giraffe, and that's clearly not a intelligent design. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, you could look at it a brilliant way to overcome the problem. Mm-hmm. But the problem was overcome through an evolutionary process, which is obvious, because if a designer was going to create that, you wouldn't create it that way. It's not efficient. It's not an intelligent design. On the other hand, it works. So you could say, in that sense, the design works. depends on what you're talking about. Humans and well, we've talked, Fiona, about humans giving birth, and the fact that the baby has to, because of our upright posture, and our hips have had to move. The baby has to turn on the way out, which is just incredibly unintelligent. It's dangerous for the mother, it's dangerous for the baby, but it works. Our evolutionary process has come up with that solution to the problem of babies with big heads, and the fact that we have upright posture. So it's not an intelligent design, but I certainly wouldn't call it stupid. It's
efficient.
It's efficient. It's just not the most efficient. If you were going to have a designer, it's efficient. It's efficient if you look at it through the evolutionary process. It's not efficient if you're thinking of an intelligent designer. Go ahead.
Yeah, you don't have to be a world-class sprinter to survive a lion attack. All you have to be is faster than the other guy. That's it. Now, that is going to depend on how fast the other guy is. And so you can't actually look at it in isolation, because you have got to look at all the competitors about you. You just have to be good enough. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be good enough that you can compete. And as I say, run away from the lion faster than the other guy.
Yeah.
There's a great joke
in front of you.
There's a great joke, I think, with that. Where's it? Two people, there's a bear or something chasing two people, and one guy was saying, some guy started putting on his training shoes with his pal, and the other guy said, "Why are you putting these training shoes on? Because you can't outrun a bear." He said, "Yeah, but I can outrun you."
Right.
Yeah.
You only have to be as faster than the other guy behind you. That's it.
Right.
Yeah, that's
and
it.
I'd also like to talk about the manatee for a minute. The humanity. Sorry. Manatee. The humanity. Manatees are marvelous creatures, aren't they?
Yeah.
They fit their ecological niche. However, they aren't very fast.
Yeah.
They don't have any defense mechanisms whatsoever. So in a different environment, they'd be wiped out pretty quick. So they're not exactly, in that sense, the most brilliantly designed creature on the face of the earth.
Do they have any predators then? Do they not have any predators?
Not too many. It has to. They live in shallow areas,
Right.
brackish waters a lot, warm, and it's not that they don't have any predators. It's just that they are able to hide from predators. A great big blobby thing lying still in a bunch of seagrass and whatever is not always that easy to see. But if they had a more aggressive predator, they'd be gone really quickly.
That's true.
They just aren't. They aren't marvels of design in if you're thinking in terms of intelligent design. On the other hand, the evolutionary process has favored them. And we used to have members of that family all over. There used to be the giant sea cow off the coast of Alaska. That died because people killed it. We extincted that one. But there weren't a lot of them. I don't remember. You'd have to look it up. The giant sea cow. 1800s maybe?
Right.
But there also weren't that many of them, because, again, this is a creature that, doesn't have a lot of defenses. It basically hides, and has no. It's not fast. It doesn't have any teeth. It doesn't have any fangs or anything like that. Just a big blobby thing that floats around and munches on water hyacinth.
They've got quite a slow metabolism, haven't they?
Yeah, I think so. But
yeah, I think
again,
they're quite
this
efficient in that term.
I would never call a manatee a stupid design. It fits. It fits its ecological niche. It would be disastrous in another ecological niche.
I think they're energy efficient.
Stellar sea cow, I think, is the proper name. Stellar sea cow. You'll have to look it up. Go ahead.
You got to start wrapping this up a little bit. I do think that we went through this 7 biological myths no electrical engineer would ever tolerate. Now, granted, we didn't go into that much detail per se. I don't want to get these things too complicated. You know, when you have Sam in here, obviously, and Fiona, they probably could talk about this shit for 3 days and not even scratch the surface. So I think, you know, on a very surface level, I think we did a very good job to express how this guy does not know anything about biology. He needs to stick with electrical engineering.
Goddamn bloody idiot.
If you look at some of the comments at the bottom, they kind of express the same sentiment. Some people agree with him, but again, the ones that agree with him are only talking about Darwinism. They're not even talking about evolution. This goes back to the whole Tommy thing and his, you know, scientific descent from Darwinism. People need to get off this fucking misunderstanding that Darwinism is evolution. It's not the same thing, people. Anyways, I'm going to keep it open a little bit longer. The person needs a computer here in a little while, so he's out. But I do want to say a few things, and then if I can keep it open for a little while, I will. One, I just hit 250 subscribers. I know it's not huge. I'm not like, you know, A-lister, but for somebody who had only 1 subscriber just a few months ago, I'm pretty thrilled for that. I appreciate everybody's sentiments and their comments and their support. I've got a vastly far more amount of positive feedback than negative. I mean, 98% to 2. I'm enjoying these conversations. I've been enjoying the Google Hangouts. I'm enjoying making videos. When I get my computer, I'll be making actual videos rather than just Hangouts. So I just want to thank you all for all being on my panels always. When I get these things together and somebody challenges us, I know I can count from a group of people that I can just pull from that have knowledge of this topic. They're not just pulling their shit out their ass. These are actual PhDs. These are actual master's people. These are grad students. This is not a panel of people that are just literally, you know, Joe Yoko off the street. I mean, except for, you know, of course, Josiah here. Just kidding. But by the way, Josiah, I want to ask you, because you popped in. Are you learning anything from any of these things, Josiah? Because you've had such opinionated things, and you know, you're so staunch against evolutionary theory. Do you think you get anything out of any of these? I mean, do you actually listen to any of them, Josiah?
He always goes to the toilet. He comes into Hangout and goes to the toilet. It's a huge trick.
That would be a no, I take. That's like Darwin's deity. When Darwin deity, if you guys ever noticed, Darwin's deity gets put in a corner. There's actually people in the live chat going, okay, countdown, 10, 9, 8, till Darwin walks his dog. You can tell when he gets in the corner, he's like, oh, well, I'll be right back. I gotta go walk my dog. It's like every single time. I'm not lying. I'm not even exaggerating. Yeah, it's countdown and walk your dog. This is, you know, I've actually not even lying. This is my 3rd one, so I'm enjoying it. After I do this hangout, I will go on my tablet and then join somebody else's. It's not obviously, I do have mic issues on that one. People don't mute, but you know, it's the best I got. But
yeah, your sound on this isn't very good. You're a bit echoey. Yeah.
Let me try something real quick. Let me ask you guys this. Okay, I'm actually gonna turn my video off. I'm gonna take my mic. Okay, do I lose the echo if I do it this way?
That's better.
Mm-hmm.
That's
You guys are my best friend.
Yeah. So if I do it this way, I know I lose my echo, but the problem is I don't have my video feed. But if I guess if I really wanted to, I can make videos just like this. I just won't have the camera on. But I know that I'm sure that the echo is far less. But anyway.
Much easier to understand.
Steve, you look so different now that you have hair. It's crazy.
Thank you, Josiah. I appreciate your feedback on that. Yeah, you know, the hair club for Matt. Actually, I got it from the Rumpus. He didn't need his, so he sent it over from England.
You're welcome. Yeah, I hope someone sent a comparison to when your head was bald.
That was like still is. But anyways, you know, hey, Josiah, you know, I hope you get something out of these videos. You know, I'm gonna mute you because you still have a background noise from hell. But anyways, Jamal, I want you to do some research on these things. I mean, you advocating this kind of stuff. There are technical things. Sam is the person who's probably the leading expert in our community on informational systems. If I had to pick somebody, only secondary to, you know, Fiona as far as biology. But you know, if you're going to advocate these intelligent design positions, I think you should be able to define the terms. I think you should be able to express them and talk about them. I'm not a big fan of discussing intelligent design only because I have such little faith in it that it's boring to me. I prefer the young Earth creationist debates and things of that nature. But Jamal, will you do that? Will you get back to us? I mean, I will allow you to come on anytime, and you can re-engage and get more more specifics on the the specific specified complex information, or whatever the hell terminology you want to use. Would you do that, Jamal?
If I have time. I'm not really. I'm not really interested in this topic. I just briefly go over some creationist stuff, but I'm not really heavily invested in it or anything like that.
Okay. Well, I mean,
Me either.
you were defending this guy, so I figured you might want to. I know. I'm not a geocentrist, obviously. Yeah, you are supposedly. That, if you wanted to challenge, that would be on Greg's page. You are still a young creationist, though, right?
Right.
Okay. Now we'll have another hangout. Yeah. I mean, does anybody want to add it? Awesome. Any other further things before I kind of end this, bring this one to a close, so I don't keep the video too long, and then probably go to another hangout somewhere.
Yeah, Jamal, I want to get a better microphone or computer or something, because it's impossible to interact with him without.
Yeah, you got more. You got so much reverb and so much echo. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that, first of all, I think this hangout went really, really well. And it was kind of from our previous hangout, Steve said, well, what else should we talk about? And I mentioned the disc that I just linked, from a Facebook group. But the problem we see here is one that we frequently see, although I believe this guy's a lot more honest than the creationists we run into. And it's a basic with him, it's a basic misunderstanding of biology. And so he makes a lot of the mistakes he makes because of a basic misunderstanding of biology. And a lot of the people who advocate for intelligent design and creationism are referencing sites that in many cases just outright lie. And they take those sites as being accurate because those sites advocate for their point of view. And that's unfortunate because, again, a lot of what I call the professional creationists, people like Answers in Genesis, Creation Ministries International, lie a lot. And so we find people that we talk to who are intelligent design proponents or young earth creationists are parroting things that just simply aren't true and that they don't understand. And I've often said, fine, I don't care if you're a young earth creationist. I don't care if you're an intelligent design proponent. I don't care if you're an old earth creationist but you think that humans were specially designed or whatever. But your argument should be based on facts and not on sheer speculation, not on things that have been twisted and tortured into fitting into a certain position, not on quote mines like this other thing I just posted, which is like 44 things against evolution or something. Has a whole bunch of quotes, and every single one I looked at is a quote mine. And one of them, they actually removed the middle of the quote without putting ellipses in it. So if you are a young earth creationist or an ID proponent, be careful of what you're using as arguments for your position. And I think most of us here would be happy to talk to you and show you where there are problems with those arguments. And of course, then you can try to search out better arguments. That's basically all I wanted to say. Is
there's a great
using misinformation. Let me mute you. Go ahead, Rumpus. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a great paragraph I've just spotted in this plonkers bit. Just listen to this bollocks. Darwinism as we know it cannot stand under the weight of 21st century DNA research. It's impossible, because I've read the literature. Amazon is absolutely littered with books written from every imaginable point of view, both religious and non-religious, pointing to the creaking, groaning edifice of neo-Darwinism. Only someone who's a plonker would say, because I've read the literature. He's an idiot. He's a bloody idiot.
And he conflates all these terms. He doesn't know the difference between Darwinism, neo-Darwinism, modern evolutionary synthesis. He does. This guy is literally he's just throwing this shit out there. Anybody who
That's language.
So
do you not agree with intelligent design, or is that what do you guys?
You can listen in, but the adults are talking.
Wow. I just wanted to ask your opinion on intelligent design.
We just spent 2 hours kind of addressing it.
And I actually haven't been here for 2 hours, so I'm sorry I missed 2 hours of you guys. It's a simple, like 5 Word.
Intelligent design is an unsupportive conjecture of a hypothesis that is unverifiable, unvalidatable, non-experimental,
Unfalsifiable.
unfalsifiable, non-predictive. I mean, it's basically is saying I'm looking at this and I think monkeys flew out of my ass, and therefore monkeys flew out of my ass and designed this. There's nothing to design. It's basically creationism wrapped up in scientific terminology and stuff.
Can I ask a question here?
Don't mute when you're not talking. We cannot hear you. Go ahead.
Hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so you guys believe robots are designed, obviously, right?
Well, sure, but wait, just a second. I just want to throw in something. I actually disagree on one aspect. I think intelligent design is falsifiable in the sense that I think it is false, hence would have to be falsifiable for it. So that's not something I would agree with, but to go to Jamal's point, yes, I do agree that robots are designed. And
well,
even
I don't agree with you on that. It could be false and not have to be falsifiable.
Yeah, agreed.
We're talking about Karl Popper's version of falsifiability. That doesn't mean
something doesn't have to be falsifiable to be false.
Yes, I think so as well. But anyways, that's a different topic. That's a different hangout. But
all right. In any case, Jamal, I would agree with your point. Heck, I would agree with every point that you made in this hangout. I won't even correct you on your science, or your understanding of science, although I think people here have done a fairly good job of doing that. I still think your argument is either fallacious in that it cherry picks examples, or it's going to be redundant in that it just goes back to a cosmological argument.
Science falsely so-called.
Well, I mean.
Well, that's not so. Well, that's. Wait a minute. My argument isn't scientific. It's one. On the rules of logic and reasoning. I mean, this is essentially Immanuel Kant's argument, which is, look, either you're going to accept direct examples only, in which case we have examples of robots designing other robots. So you have non-thinking entities that are in fact designing, or you're not going to accept them and you're going to say, no, we're only going to accept we'll accept like only chains, where it just terminates in an intelligence. But at that point, you're just cherry picking, because if you're going to say that it terminates at the intelligence, why that? Why not just say it terminates at something like the universe, which is really just a big conditioning machine that works off of the rules of physics and chemistry. In which case, and if you're going to say, well, because the universe itself was created by an intelligence God, well, that's going to need proof from, well, a cosmological argument. So it's either redundant in that case or fallacious in the first case.
I'll tell you what, Max, you have a wonderful. Hang on, before you, Jamal, you have a wonderful thing that you bring up. I like your argument on that. You've said it twice now, and I really like it. However, I do got to end this particular video. I got to end this hangout. Do you want to carry over? Do you want to start with Max maybe on your channel, and then you guys could go more into cosmological, theological arguments, and then go from there, because I do got to end this one, and then we'll get on, and I'll get my tablet, and then we can join you on your channel, or do you want somebody else to host it maybe?
Invite me.
Oh, God.
I would like an invitation if someone else is opening one for that.
Who wants to, anybody want to open a hangout on their particular channel?
I'm going to bed, I'm afraid.
You know what?
Do you have a channel? Do you ever do hangouts?
I do have a channel, and in fact, I have a channel, and I'll start up a hangout, and since Josiah wants in, and since Jamal, you look interested, I'll invite both of you, and I'll give my argument against the teleological argument.
Invite everybody here. Give us the panelists here now. Give us first priority, of course, and then open up to everybody else. Jade, I'm sure wants. Go ahead.
I just want to say, this is one thing we used to do in the old days when we had the Friday Fail that Brian J. used to run. Is he would, because we would run hangout. This is when the hangouts were only 4 hours. We would run hangout after hangout on Friday night. So what we do is Brian would go and form a new hangout. He would then give the link to one person in this hangout, who would then post it into the inside chat.
That's what I did the last
one. And that way, all of the people in the inside chat would get first choice to go into his hangout,
I
and
did
one
have-
person would linger behind.
I'm gonna step out just for a minute. Give me the link. I will join. I will, but I've got to.
Okay.
Yeah, take care of something real fast. So I'm gonna end this broadcast real quick, Jade. Again, but thank you all. Jade, I loved your post on this one. I think it was a great idea to do a little video on it. Again, I like the fact we didn't get complicated. We just did a tertiary, surface level, evaluation of this guy's claims, but enough to demonstrate the problems he had in his conceptualization of biology. And I'm on 2.5 boons for him, and I'm still able to do this. So I mean, hopefully after I'm finish this, I'm like, I'm having fun. So I will see you guys in the next hangout. All you guys are watching, and all you guys are supporting me and subscribe to my channel. Thank you guys. Okay, so I'm gonna.